Hello everybody, this is CJ Wiley with more Adventures on the Road. I've been thinking about doing this video for a while, and today I got the sign that it's probably time. I was talking to a friend of mine here in Bristol, Tennessee, and he started bringing up about the gambling and double steering and how he won a big score by being in with somebody that was in a pool room, etc. And I laughed with him and I said, man, that's exactly how I made my biggest scores too. And if you really ask the pool hustlers that were known for that type hustle, they're all going to tell you that's how they won their most money. Like Jack Cooney was famous for going to places and staying like 2 or 3 weeks and going in and reading the paper every day and not playing pool, and he had a lot of patience. And then when he did play, he was real good at stalling and basically would convince the people that he didn't play as good as he did, which I was pretty good at that too, so that's a natural element. But my favorite way to hustle on the road was like I did with Omaha John and Rusty Brandemeyer and Weldon Rogers, and we just went from town to town and played the best players, and generally didn't go to the big cities first. We'd go to the smaller surrounding areas and beat everybody we could, and then go to the big city pool rooms and fire that money at winning the mother load, because usually you could win a little bit more money in the big cities, especially if there was drug dealers around, and back then they were plentiful. Drug dealers and pimps and bookmakers and all kinds of thieves, underworld characters. I knew all kinds of them, and I never judged what they did for a living. I do have judgments if somebody hurts a kid or some of that type stuff. That's a whole different story to me. I would definitely be capable of hurting somebody that was doing that type of stuff. But most of the people I'm talking about were underworld characters and just made money doing things that weren't quite legal. However, as far as the hustling goes, they were never on the level of like stockbrokers in Wall Street and some of those big-time criminals. Pretty much everybody, especially if you get to the billionaire stage in this world, you've got to lie most of the time. That one that owns the electric cars, I've double-checked him I don't know how many times, and I have never caught him telling the truth. Like every single thing about him and what he says is not true. And I can relate, and I don't judge him for that. He's probably the best con man in the whole world right now. And so I got a certain respect for him. But I also don't like the side that those people are on, because they're against us. They're all in the one big club, and we mere mortals are really on our own. So that's why I feel the need to share some of this stuff, because then maybe people can see what's happening at the higher level. Because in no way, shape, or form am I telling these stories so that somebody out there can use the type of hustle to hustle other people. I'm trying to give you the knowledge so you're aware of it enough to not get hustled yourself. And not just in pool. Pool's not the big deal anymore. But there's a lot of ways to get hustled in this world. And the common denominators are always there. Every single huge billion-dollar hustle or scam or con is exactly like a smaller one. It's just done with more money, and they have a bigger budget to be able to, to sweeten the pot and buy airplane tickets and do it big time. But the type of hustle doesn't change. There's the big ones are, playing two sides against the middle. That's when there's two hustlers working together and they're both acting like they're enemies, but they're actually not. And then they have people in between that they're going back and forth, and they're fooling both of them because they're just playing off each other. That's playing two sides against the middle, and that's one of the ones that we use basically quite a bit. And then there's the bait and switch. That's another one that's pretty strong and can go up to high levels, where you bait people with a certain thing, you convince them that it's true, and then you switch what the topic is, or what the subject or even physical thing is. Like a magician. A magician will do these tricks, the bait and switch, where he acts like the coin's in this hand, but it's really in this hand. And that's probably the easiest way to protect yourself from cons, is just always do the opposite of what they want you to do. It's as easy as that. If they tell you to play one guy and not another, you probably should do it the other way around. If they tell you to go east, you probably should go west. And if they say put a lot of money on something, it's probably better to wait and even bet on it going down. So that's just kind of the basics, so you don't have to have like a college education like I do in this stuff. The PhD, the pool hall degree. But one of the best hustles that I did, where I learned this, I'm going to tell a real sophisticated one, but first I want to pave the way with something that Strong Arm John taught me, and that was down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He was down there hustling and gambling, and I was living up in South Carolina. I was actually living with my girlfriend and another girl, and I was flat broke, and things weren't going well at all. And my mother sent me a letter that suggested that I join the military, and that was not something I wanted to do. All I could think about is I'd have to wake up at 6 a.m. every day and do push-ups, and they'd be beating on bells and pans and all that stuff. So that lit a fire under me. So she knew how to motivate me, and that may have been what she was doing intentionally. Was just she knew I wasn't going to join the military or the army or whatever. So, and she was really sharp. I mean, now that I'm older, I can see how she kind of manipulated me as a child, but in a good way. You can manipulate people in positive ways too. I mean, manipulation generally is used in kind of a negative context, but you can manipulate somebody to exercise more or eat better, or like, learning some of this stuff, or getting a higher education, so that manipulation depends on the intent. So John called me up. I'd just been to McDonald's like the previous day. I walked there, it was about a mile to get there. I got there, and all I had was, I had like $1 bill and some change, and it's all I could scrounge up. And I was 3 cents short. And I will always remember this, because I remember being in a meeting a few years later with the president of McDonald's Corp, and I told him this story, and he thought it was funny. So I went from being 3 cents short at McDonald's to sitting in the middle of a racetrack in Florence, South Carolina, in a $1.3 million motor home with the president of McDonald's. National Corp was he's the one that created or invented the playgrounds for kids at McDonald's. So that was a separate thing. So he was making a lot of money off that, but that was separate from McDonald's, I guess, probably because of lawsuits. So if a kid fell off the slide or something, they couldn't sue McDonald's. They could only sue the National Corp, which is a subsidiary of McDonald's. Anyway, so they gave me the quarter pounder meal anyway, which I was so thankful for. And I've told people, if that same person needed $300 a few years later, I would have just given it to them and never expected them to pay it back, just because they gave me 3 cents when I really needed it. It's not the amount of money, it's the emergency of it, or if you don't have any, it's really important. I've never really sweated money except when I didn't have any. And quite honestly, when I had the most money in my life, I wasn't happy because so many people were trying to do to me what I'm telling you we did to other people. Because one thing that I learned early on, like I started going on the road with John and Doug Smith and Rick Thompson and some of those Omaha John when I was still in high school. So I got a crash course in a lot of this stuff that I didn't quite understand at the time and didn't really need to. Let's see where I'm at here. I get out in the wilderness. I don't know where I'm at. Let's see. I'm going east. I don't know if that's the right direction or not. We'll try it. So, but what I learned right away when we went on the road was there were several spots we went to that we had somebody on the inside. As a matter of fact, that was almost the majority of the time when we were going in and winning these real big scores. When there was 3 of us, we generally had a steerman, and he usually got 20% just to tell us who to play, what order to play them in, and kind of the psychological profile of how they would lose the most money. And that was worth 20%. Now, if they did more, like if they actually had to lay down a limit, a lot of times we'd go in and play that person first and lose quite a bit of money, and then we would, of course, get reimbursed for losing that, but we'd also give him a higher percentage, so they may get 30% or something. And I've been in situations. I'll tell you about a story here in the coming week or so where I gave up 50%. And there was a time, actually 60%. I actually got 40%, but we were dealing with such big numbers that 40% of, a few $100,000 is a lot of money. So, and when you're dealing with that much, you can just guarantee pretty much that somebody is double steering the guy that's losing all the money. And that's another thing that I put together pretty quick, is a lot of times the guy that was steering us into the action was actually pretending to be even the best friend of the target, of the person that was losing the most money. So I just didn't realize how treacherous that really was. And I've had that stuff happen to me too. I'll pretty much guarantee most of you listening to this have had a friend or even best friend screw you over on some kind of money deal, and probably more than you even realize. So pretty much any time you hear of somebody in a pool room losing like $100,000 or $200,000 or more than that, he's being double steered, triple steered. He's probably got at least 1 or 2 people around him that are in with the people that are beating him. So I was up in South Carolina. John called me up. Like I said, I had no money, so he flew me down to Fort Lauderdale, and I went into the pool room that night and ended up playing him. And I think I lost $3,500 the first night, $2,500 or $3,500, I can't remember. But after it was over, I went up to the bar, and the house detective, that's what we call the guy. There's usually one in every pool room that's kind of the know-it-all, and he thinks he's really smart and really sharp, and he basically knocks a lot of games too. He'll keep the action down, and if he knows somebody that's a hustler, he'll tell everybody, and that's what you call knocking the action. These days, it's not a big deal. Back during the times I'm talking about, those guys could get something like something in their drink. They used to put horse tranquilizers, or to make them go to the bathroom, whatever those are. They would put those in the drinks of those detectives that were knocking, and then they would lock the bathroom door. I've heard a few stories about that. It's funny, but you'd hate to be in that situation, or you've just taken a big horse what do they call it for constipation? Anyway, I guess when it hits a human being, it comes out, you can't hold it. So, so if they put that in your drink and you go to the bathroom and it's locked and you can't get in the bathroom, then you've got to run out the door and you might not make it. So, but that's how seriously they took that stuff back in the days of the pool hustler, which was more in the 80s, early 90s. I think it really started dying out around the turn of the century, especially with camera phones and the internet. So I lost to John that first night. Go up to the bar, the house detective comes up to me, and I insinuated that I was a drug dealer. And, you know, I knew the terminology and told him I was in a hurry up and wait situation, and, you know, I can't wait to get out of there because I got to get home and my girlfriend's mad at me and I'm going to buy her a new Corvette. And, you know, I just told him some pretty tall tales there, but all of it was to make him think I was a drug dealer without me telling him. See, that's another way. When you're manipulating somebody in a hustle, you never tell them what you want them to think. You tell them something different that makes them think what you want, you know. And I can do that with several different topics, and people never know. Never. Unless I tell them. So, but the main thing is you want to make your target think they're smarter than you, and preferably you want somebody with a pretty big ego. And you want them to think they're a better player than you too, obviously. But there's something about when you put it in somebody's head that they're superior to you, they drop their guard and they underestimate you. And, you know, and that's what I always wanted. You know, I was never one to be in the spotlight. I didn't even play in any major tournaments till I was 21, and I was running racks and winning tournaments. Like gambling matches when I was like 12. I ran 5 racks in a row, twice in a row, when I was 15 on a bar table. And I think I ran 5 racks in a row on a big table too when I was about 15 or 16. And so I just always had a knack for pool. And the hustling part I learned from the very best, like Strong Arm John and Weldon Rogers and Chuck Bradley and Doug Smith and Omaha John. They were all super sharp when it came to the hustling world. They'd been around all those big cities, you know, LA and Dallas, Chicago, New York. Generally, that's where we call it the smarts, or call them the smarts or the sharpies that generally know every move in the book. And so that's where you really need to learn it. Most of the small town people, I mean, they can still learn it, of course, especially nowadays. But back then, generally, the smaller town people didn't really know all the tricks and the slick moves like the big city ones did. So I lost 2 nights in a row to Strong Arm John, and then on the 3rd night, we were supposed to play again, and John called the bartender and told him that he had a family emergency. He had to go back home for 2 days, but he'd be back, and to not let that kid play anybody else till he got back. Now, of course, he didn't really believe the bartender was going to do that. As a matter of fact, he told him to do that, knowing he'd do the opposite, because everybody knew around there already that I was a sucker and that I was probably a drug dealer. And I was, when you're down in Florida in that area, that's pretty easy to pass off. And so I had a big target on me. And John didn't show up. He really didn't show up for about 5 or 6 days, maybe a week. Now, we were still together. He would just never go in the pool room when I was in there. Or if we were going into a place where they didn't know me, we'd act like we didn't know each other as well. But after we played that first time, obviously we had to we did know each other in that respect. So, but I look back at that, and it was such a incredible move, because when people see you lose, especially twice, man, people can't even talk them out of playing you. Like I've had people try to knock me down there when that was going on, and people wouldn't even listen to it. They once they see you lose, it definitely gives them a superiority complex. I'm talking about pool gamblers usually. So I made schedules for the next week. I was solid booked. And I remember we'd write down my schedule, and I would go to a certain pool room to match up with a certain person. And we pretty much estimated how long it'd take for me to beat him, and then go to another pool room, and how long it would take to beat him, and then how long it'd take maybe to get some food. And so I scheduled it as well as I could, and I tried to keep on schedule. If I was playing somebody that was a 3 or 4 hour man, I tried to beat him out of the maximum money in 3 or 4 hours, which oftentimes meant I'd stay even with them for an hour, or even lose, and then try to double the bet. And since they thought I was a drug dealer and I'd already lost so much money, I think altogether I lost over $6,000 to John, which was our money. So I didn't lose anything. But that's what we call laying down a lemon, or putting on a show. And it happens a lot, and it's happening right now on the big stage. People are acting like they like each other and don't like each other, and they're all on the same side. I'm telling you, they're all at the top on the same side. They're all in the same club, and we don't matter to them at all. Just like me beating those people back then, I didn't care about them as far as being people. They were just gamblers, and they had money, and it was my job to win it. So there was nothing personal, and that's kind of the way it is these days as well. It's not personal. They just don't care about me and you. So we have to learn what they're doing on our own, and have to be at least a little bit suspicious. Man, I know people that just believe everything's on the square, and all this stuff is just happening by coincidence. Meanwhile, every week there's some new thing to get everybody's attention. It's really a joke how fake it is once you develop the eyes to see. Just like one of my favorite sayings is, we only recognize what we're familiar with. If you're not familiar with the hustling, you won't recognize it. So hopefully, if you're watching me, you already have a pretty good idea how this stuff goes down. I don't hustle pool anymore, and I haven't in 35 years. My last hustle I'm going to tell about, and that was about 35 years ago. So I haven't done that and don't want to do it. So I use my talents and knowledge to crack the big cases. I want to show how the big boys are putting down the hustles. I'm talking about $1 billion hustles and even $1 trillion hustles now. $1 trillion. Do people even know how much that is? 1,000 billion? Nobody can conceive that much. It would take I think 1,500 years to count to 1 trillion or something ridiculous like that. So that's another thing that hustlers do, is they, especially these big time ones, they say numbers so big that a lot of people just black out, and they can't count that high. So they just presume there's somebody smarter than them that has figured it out, and they're getting the right story. But oftentimes that's not true at all. And it's not difficult to deceive the whole country, because so many people are on board, especially the two ends against the middle system, which is the political system. It's the same, at the lower levels they're different and have different opinions and everything. Believe me, at the highest level, those two wings are of the same bird, two sides of the same coin, without a doubt. And they just put in their best hustler to try to make everybody like it. Because that's another thing you got to do when you're taking off the big scores. You got to beat them and make them like it, or a lot of times they'll get violent. I'm pretty fortunate that I've really never had trouble with any of my big hustles, but I have I have had some physical issues. I got stabbed twice and stuck up at gunpoint 3 times, and I've told some of those stories. My new book has the details of how I got stabbed, and what a great impression that made on my life, as funny as that is, that both stab wounds almost killed me. I had one in my head right here and one in my stomach, and the doctor said this much more would have killed me in both of them. That much more would have got this artery and I would have died, and that much more down here would have ruptured my spleen. So I must have had a guardian angel that night. But one thing I'm sure of is it helped me as far as where I was in life, because I was real aggressive, and I took a lot of chances that I probably wouldn't have lived through. So that one right there, it got me into martial arts. That's the main thing. When I healed up, I went in and started training, and I was training like it was life or death, and ended up taking over 1,700 martial arts lessons, and I was an instructor too, so I gave probably 100 hours of instruction. A lot of times you learn it more deeply when you teach it, and that's another thing. Like with pool, I teach pool a lot, and I understand the game better now than I did when I was the #1 player in the world. Or I just don't play quite as good, but it's because I don't play as much. There's no reason that you can't play a championship level speed. I can probably play that level another 4 or 5 years. Generally, a martial artist like I am hits their prime at about 65. But I train every day. I just got through riding my mountain bike. I don't do martial arts every day necessarily. I just do something, mountain bike, or got a lot of weapons movements that I do with a 7-foot staff. And so anyway, I wanted to share this story of and just let you know to beware of those people that act like they're your best friends. Because if there's gambling involved and money involved, and you're losing money and they're telling you to play, then chances are they might be in on the action. But anyway, it's always good to at least be careful. So, if you want to know more about my systems, techniques, and fundamentals that I use to become the ESPN World Champion, join me at masteringpocketbilliards.com. I also have books for sale there that you can get them autographed, or my SuperStroke and Super Stance trainers are there, which are doing real well. That enables you to get in the perfect position and use my resistance band to exercise your stroke and build a stroke right in the comfort of your own home or hotel room. I've been using these things for many, many years, and it's an advantage, and I'm just sharing my advantages. So if you want to take me up on it, that's fine. cjwiley.com. I'll talk with you soon.